Recording in progress.
All right, and we have residents that are going to start coming in now. So here's Kate Meekins and Michael Freestone. Kate Wall. Priscilla. Alex Kozin. Sharnette Robinson and MRTV. Timothy Meyer.
So I want to say a quick thank you for the people that join us on time. We're going to give it a few more minutes as we're letting more people coming in. So hold patiently for at least the next 2 minutes, okay? And thank you for being here, and also to our wonderful staff as well.
Councilmember Tarlow. Deanna Douglas.
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
Just wanted to make sure there was something happening.
Oh, you
Hold
came
for a few
in.
minutes.
Yeah, you came in right after. We said we'll give everybody to come in like 3 more minutes, and we ask the residents who were here on time patience as we let a couple more people in. That's what happens when you make it late, Jimmy. You missed the whole announcement.
All right. Rick Ruggles.
Okay. So it is 7:35. Freya, you have the host control, correct? In case I need
Yep.
something on your end.
Yes.
Perfect. So as they come in, just, obviously we're not gonna have nobody waiting in the waiting room. We're getting them straight in. And we will start the meeting to honor the people that were here on time. So that we have, a great conversation, and council and staff is definitely here to hear the residents. And it's important to state that this is one of many meetings, and the approach to be able to abate traffic in our city is going to be a holistic approach, not just work with PD, but also public works, council, and obviously Mr. Kamali as an overall, right? Because there are like various studies, as like the tool studies, the bike study, that's how we've been able to get a lot of rain gardens to be able to help with some of the traffic control, as well as bumps, stop signs. So it's a combination of various things, and the idea is to gather information and thoughts from the residents as well of our teams, in order to start working on a study that covers the whole entire city, in order to figure out what the hotspots are and what needs more work, but at the same time, work as hard as we can to make sure we do not move, we don't solve one street and push the problem to another street. So that's very important. So we do have a council member Stolfus and council member Tarlo on the line. And like this is considered an open meeting, but more like a hearing session. So no decisions are going to be made tonight. And we definitely need to be aware of the fact that there's three elected officials here, but since it's been an advertised meeting, it is an open meeting, but no decisions will be taking place, at least in this meeting. Okay. So once again, thank you guys so much for being here. Jared and Jimmy, do you guys want to add anything else before I move on to the next step in the agenda?
Yeah, I can just say a few words. I just want to thank everyone for, sorry, can you hear me?
We could hear you.
Okay, great. Sorry, thanks for coming tonight, and just thanks for everyone for coming and being real interested in participating in this community. Thanks for coming tonight, bring your input, hearing what others have to say as well. And we're really looking forward to hearing feedback. I know there's probably a lot of opinions on this particular topic. Just a reminder to everyone to be courteous and kind to everyone as well. And I just wanted to make a note, this is not, as Mayor Benitez said, this is not there's no decision happening here. This is a listening session. The dynamics that I know folks are concerned about are ones that have been of concern to, us as residents as well. I'm a walker, I'm a biker, I'm a driver, and traffic safety is, and a lot of the issues circulating around our city are very important to not just to me, but to everyone else. So with that, I'll pass it over to Jimmy if he has any words, and thanks again for coming tonight.
Thank you, Jared. Jimmy, the floor is yours.
Jimmy, you're on mute.
Didn't hear my speech. Okay. As Jared and the mayor said, we're here to really listen. We're going to be discussing this at the council meeting. Obviously, speeding and safety is a big concern for people in our community, and searching for solutions and what we can and should do about it is one of our top priorities. So, Lieutenant, I think the ball is in your court. Or Chief, whatever.
Thank you, Jimmy. So I also want to make note awareness that this is the meeting that's going to be recorded. So that way the information we gather here, we put it together to make sure we listen back to make sure we gather the different informations. We do have Lieutenant Sims and Lieutenant Freyer both on the line, and Chief Alston as well. So I'm going to pass the mic over to Chief. And then followed by the lieutenants. We are asking, once we open the floor to the community for questions or feedback, anything, if we could stay with the 3 minute, rule, right? So that we have enough time to make sure we hear everybody and give it the opportunity for everybody to at least go one time around. And if you have something to say, like a second time, then you're welcome to have the mic. We want to make sure we have a fair floor. I know in some spaces, the rules used to utilize like if you're the kind of person that has like 3,000 things, to come in, like, stay your statement under 3 minutes and step back to allow somebody that might not like be the first person to raise their hand to also have a conversation. And if there's a difference of opinion, let's respect each other. After all, we're neighbors, and together we will come to a conclusion on what needs to happen. So the fact that you're here is very appreciative. It means that, this subject is important enough to you. So Chief, I'm putting the floor on your hands, and please let the community know what are the next steps. So what information you guys have gathered in behalf of your lieutenants and the police department.
All right, thank you, Mayor. Good evening, everyone. Thank you all for being here. This is truly a matter that's been of grave concern to us. Thank you, community members, for reaching out to us. Thank you for being very persistent in calling for assistance. These are issues that have been occurring for years before I even arrived at Mount Rainier. Stop sign violations has been a constant. Speeding in our city has been a constant, and we must address these issues. One good thing, this meeting is going to be recorded. My recommendation to the city manager is that we quickly get a consultant firm to come out and do a overall broad speed and traffic analysis in our city for stop sign violations. We're going to look at some immediate things that we may be able to put in place. At a previous jurisdiction, I put in place traffic calming devices that were electronic signs that showed the actual speed of drivers. Many of our approaches to calming traffic in our cities are engineering studies, educating our public, and also enforcement. Lieutenant Sims is going to advise you of some of the stats that we've put together over the past 5 years. Pretty astonishing stats that from 2017 to 2021, the number of stop sign violations we've cited for, the number of stop sign violations we've issued warnings for, the number of speeding violations we've issued warnings or citations for. So thank you all again for being here, and please know that your concerns matter to our team. We're going to work with Public Works, the mayor and council, and we know this has been very important for you all. So thank you for being here. Lieutenant Sims.
Thank you, Chief. Lieutenant Sims, the floor is yours.
Good evening, everyone. As Chief stated, over the past 5 years, we have conducted multiple stop signs so far as violations, as well as conducted speed enforcement. During the years of 2017, well, first, the 5-year totals in total for stop sign violations, we've issued out 6,871 warnings, while so far as actual citations have been 1,502 citations. For speed violations, in the past 5 years have been 1,246 warnings with 620 citations written. Now, in the year so far as it have broken down from 2017 and 2018 being one of our lowest years, going through the transitions that we were going through, the stop sign violations, we were looking at 164 warnings and 186 citations. The speed violations were 101 warnings and 229 citations. During this time, you're looking at most people speeding. These also the 2 years where we had more traffic circle incidents than we've had since I started, which was in 2013. So you will see that the increase of citations for speed were at 229. During 2018, for stop sign warnings, we had 92, and citations were 112. During this time, we were also working at almost a bare minimum skeleton crew of six officers, meaning that we had one officer working during the day and 2 officers at night. And the speed violations were 42 warnings and 87 citations. The same variable took place only because at that time, with 2 officers working at night and 1 on day, they started to handle calls, not necessarily in priority, but those type of calls, which would be those type of calls that may be a robbery or something like that. Those calls that took the officer off the street for an amount of time. Now, from 2019, when things started to pick back up right before COVID, stop sign violations, as we started to get reports of people running stop signs, especially like on 34th and Taylor, right outside of council members Tarlow's house. We literally started to pick things back up with 1,168 warnings, 639 citations, speed violations, 134 warnings, and 224 citations. 2020 for stop signs, 3,162 warnings, and citations were 343, and the speed violations were 935 warnings and 64 citations. During that time of 2020, that's when you're looking at the whole COVID period really starting to come into play, and some type of leeway given to those who were coming through. And not many people were also driving at that time that we were having speeding. Right near the end of 2020, we started, I believe, Chief, correct me, from when we started to put in the speed cameras. And so for 2021, we started to see 2,285 warnings and 222 citations for stop sign violators. But during the speed violations, we were seeing 34 warnings and 8 citations. Part of this has to do with the moment that we see those on Rhode Island Avenue and other hotspots. They're slowing down because they know that the camera's there and they're not sure if there are other cameras around. They'll take the chance of running a stop sign, but they won't take the chance of getting a speeding ticket, which may seem a little weird, but those are the statistics that we have, and we're continuing to do so in certain areas. Off of Shepherd and 30th, I did sit and watch for a minute and saw that, and saw that while sitting there, I parked my cruiser at 30th and Shepherd, and while sitting there outside of my cruiser as well as in it, I watched as those who came past and necessarily did not stop at the stop sign, they slowed down, they didn't stop behind it, or they just didn't stop at all. For me, this was not a time for enforcement. It was a time to see who was doing it. And unfortunately, as cars went past me, I was able to look down the street and see that some of these same cars that didn't stop or slow down, sadly to say, were some of the residents of our great city, Mount Rainier. And it's unfortunate because the moment that we stop a citizen, then it is, well, I'm a citizen, or I'm just live down the street, or I know the mayor. These are the type of responses that we get. But that day I sat for an hour, and I want to say out of every 3, at least 2 were citizens out of every 3. And that's kind of a high statistic for those who know, because we know where the stop signs are. And I do live in Mount Rainier, so I do see it quite often. It is us who fail to stop at the stop signs. And those are the ones usually that we end up having have to stop and enforce. Those are where you get the high warnings from. Chief?
Thank you, Sims. Chief, Sims, is there any way you could put the numbers up in the screen for people to see them?
Actually, Mayor, I'm working on it right now. I'm going to be putting it in the chat room for everybody.
Perfect. Thank you so that way, if people get this information and data, I think that sometimes we think that we're very heavily given citation, but we definitely are giving more warnings than the citations. Hold on one second, because if somebody says something, it moves my chat Fixing the problem. Yeah. Okay. So in the meantime, I'm going to open up. Chief, does you and your team have anything else to add? Because I'm ready to open the floor to the community.
No, ma'am, Mayor, we're ready to listen to our residents and hear their many concerns.
Perfect. Thank you. So community members, do me a favor. If you are on the virtual chat, just type in your name and I'll add you to the speaker list. Let us know your name and what block number you belong to. So more or less we know where what specifically you're addressing, if it has to do with something with your block in a specific or overall for the city. Okay. Jackie, the floor is yours.
Hi guys, thanks so much. So my husband and I, my name is Jackie Stevens. My husband James and I live on Otis Street, sort of at the intersection of Otis Street and 34th, just south of Rhode Island Avenue. And there's tons of kids that, sort of like live around this area. When the school bus stops at that intersection, I swear there's like 20 kids that get off the school bus. And we have a young son as well. And this is also to sort of lead into saying that Otis Street, where it turns off of Eastern Avenue, it's kind of a weird turn if you guys are familiar with it. But so it's interesting how many folks actually use this road. It's almost a cut through, I think, to maybe avoid the traffic circle. But they come flying down Otis Street. And there's kids playing in yards and in the street sometimes here. So it's pretty dangerous. And they run the stop sign all the time, which I think anybody who lives down this way is familiar with. And similarly, there's issues with 34th Street. That's a very heavily used road that doesn't have any speed bumps on the south side. And so one of the things that we've really been paying a lot of attention to is how much potentially speed bumps could actually play a role in just slowing down the traffic that I think is using some of these roads as sort of cut throughs or ways to just kind of speed past other areas. So that's been something we paid a lot of attention to. And then additionally, as I said, folks run that stop sign at 34th and Otis habitually, sort of all the time. And I will just say on behalf, we've definitely seen our Mount Rainier Police Department doing a pretty good job of catching a lot of the folks that come flying through there. So we do appreciate that. And then finally, one last thing I'll mention, sort of in the same context, is Otis Street at this end is one way. It turns into two way after you cross over 34th, but this way is one way. But folks constantly go the wrong way on Otis Street. We see them turn up, and I think they're genuinely confused. There is one sign on one side of the entrance into Otis Street that says wrong way. Or do not enter, but I think somehow people miss that. So having that additional sign, maybe a second sign added that's kind of in your face, do not enter, might help with that a little bit. But so that was I just wanted to kind of chime in on this particular sort of section of town and what we're experiencing and how much we think that potentially speed bumps could really help and go a long way. Thank you.
Thank you, Jackie, for your comments. So as an update regarding Otis and Eastern, Councilmember Stofus, Tarlo, and myself, we were in the meeting this morning, and we let them know that definitely we need signage in the corner that says no turn on red to avoid some of the traffic. And we're going to create a list of signs that might need to be there. And we'll go ahead and add the one way also to the list, along with a bigger list that we're going to put together. We have called for another meeting so that way we can meet with them and figure out what other things that need to be fixed along the SHA, like, the county roads, right? So that's an update that is basically fresh right now from less than 24 hours ago. So the meeting was this morning. So we are listening to some of the stuff that, we're listening to the stuff that you're saying. And as we're going forward, like, making sure we're making connections with also the streets that are not necessarily county, because Eastern is the other issue that we have is this NDC. So we are working to try to have a meeting with DC as well, or though like they're basically, because it's like so like away from like the little border, right? So we are trying to make sure those meetings are happening. And so I want to make sure you at least knew that, okay?
Yes,
and we'll
thank you so
take
much.
and everything, okay?
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much. Sorry, Dina, the floor is yours. Is Dina Douglas here still?
Yeah, sorry, it's Deanna. Hi.
Oh, Deanna, my apologies.
There, Benitez, that's okay. I mean, if you see my name in writing, it's hard to see. How to pronounce it. Thank you. And thank you, Commissioner, for being here, and Lieutenant Sims as well, and council members and neighbors. So anyway, I'm on the east side. My husband and I are on the east side of Upshur and 32nd Street. And I have to tell you, I've coined a phrase, stoptional. Almost whenever I look out, and I was looking out today for a while, just watching the traffic, and everyone treats that stop sign like the stop signs like they're stoptional. Like, it's an option. I'm not going to take it. I'm just going to roll right through. Those are the ones who roll through slowly, kind of slow down. There are those who run through the stop sign. And in the 9 years I've been here, we've had a car totaled out in front of our house. We had a car sideswiped, and we try not to park our cars there now, but we can't move the tree that's there. And a van came around the corner and didn't stop and ran right into the tree. And I had to have the tree commissioners come out to make sure our beloved ginkgo was going to make it. So in 9 years, lots of hits at our corner and our side of the corner. And the other day, when I was looking out from my bedroom window, I saw a van round the corner, and I had forgotten to back my car up and move it from in front of our house, and it nearly struck my car. So that's a problem. But one of my concerns I saw in the discussion online, but preceding this meeting, is that someone made a very good point. Some of our streets, we can't have speed bumps on everything because we've got to get emergency vehicles through. So I don't know how we calm the traffic on streets like Mount Rainier and 34th, maybe even 32nd, because I know we need to make sure emergency vehicles can get through as quickly as possible. Anyway, so thank you for listening, and I just wanted to share that.
Thank you so much. Maybe we should have a campaign, stoptional, not an option, but definitely, I think the 3 second, 5 second rule is not always apply as stop signs. So thank you for your feedback. I think that's the reason why we said it would be a holistic approach between what could we do, because we are fully aware that because of emergency routes, it might limit some of the things that we can do. It also, when we're plowing away the snow, it definitely take our plowers take a toll on all those bumps. And that's the reality of it as well. So it'll be a combination of various things, but we definitely appreciate your feedback. All right, so let me see who's next. Sharnette, you're next, and I have Gabriella on, I'm sorry, Sharnette's next, and Kate on deck, followed by Gabriella. All right, go ahead, Sharnette.
Hi, I'm going to close that door for a minute. My grandson's there. So I have, first I want to say I'm very thankful. You know that Perry Street, we've had an issue with people speeding through here and coming off the circle. And we've brought this up. I've brought it up for several years. My truck's been hit. My Honda Pilot's been hit. My neighbor who's deaf, the back of her car was rear-ended. There is a dip right by City Hall. I don't know if it's there for drainage or something, but when people speed off the circle, they hit that dip, and I don't know if they're drinking or whatever, but they just fly up and they hit our vehicles. So, and I know you guys you can see it out. There's been there for years. If something can be done with that, and just, I love the idea of putting up those the signs, that the neon signs or whatever that can tell people to slow down. We have several elderly people and I have a disabled grandson. There is a deaf kid that lives across the street from me, his grandmother, and he stays over there a lot of the time. And it's kind of at the point, and I'm looking for some direction. Do we have to go to the Department of Transportation and just have handicap spaces put in over here or something to help us get the speed addressed on Perry Street, because where the circle is at, people are speeding off that circle and coming down, hitting our vehicles, and it's very dangerous for, you know, our children that are over on this side. I hope I'm not talking too fast. I hope everybody can understand what I'm saying, but we do have a speed hump that's on 35th Street in Perry, but it's more like a rollover hump. It's not really a speed hump. It doesn't stop traffic or anything. We just had an accident over here 2 weeks ago, and it's gotten to the point where people really aren't even calling the police. They're handling it themselves if they can still drive their vehicles away, because it really does happen frequently on this street. You can't even see when you come off 35th Street. You have to pull your vehicle all the way out onto Perry Street in order to see another vehicle coming down Perry Street. So, and it's been that way for years. We made these same complaints, and I guess the answer was to put the rollover hump instead of the speed hump there, but it's not really stopping the flow of traffic and the speeding. We do have the residential parking on Perry Street, and when people park on both sides, it kind of forces people to slow down when they are coming through, or they just hit your vehicle, but it really forces people to slow down, but your vehicles are being used as barriers to stop the traffic. So if there's something that can be put on some side, I don't remember what Luke referred to it at one point, some kind of bump out or something. So if we could have bump outs put in, you know, to slow down some of the flow of traffic. I don't think that putting bicycle lanes in on Perry Street is really the answer. And then just lastly, I know that the city has the building across the street, but those big, I don't know if you call them 8-wheeler trucks or whatever they are, we get a lot of those coming through here now, and they damage the street. They tear up the street, and they're really too big. No other vehicle can pass with them on the street. So they're just really knocking your mirrors off your cars and everything.
Sharnette, can you wrap it up because you're over the time?
Yep, I'm done.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Chief, when it comes to the handicap placard space, can you advise where they could apply for those?
Chief, you're muted.
Lieutenant Freer, can you speak on that for me?
Yes, so the permitted handicap disabled person placard signage permits, they would actually go to the MVA and request those. What will happen is the MVA will issue, if you already have your placard, they'll issue a permit number, and then they will issue signage for a parking space in front of your residence. And it will that space will only be for that permit number that they issue. So even though it's a handicap parking space, anybody else with a handicap placard but does not have the permit number for that space could actually still be cited for that. So that's one thing to keep in mind. But it would be the MVA that you would need to request that signage and the parking permit from.
Thank you so much. So Sharnette, if you need any follow up on where to go, you could definitely reach out to my Rainier PD and they could guide you on where to obtain that. And that goes for any of the other residents as well. But keep in mind the caveat that Lieutenant Freer mentioned, so that way if your placard is not assigned to that parking space, you will be cited. And those tickets are not little tickets. Those are big tickets. Okay, so we have Kate, followed by Gabriela, followed by Alex, and followed by Tin Meyer. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. Kate Wall. My husband and I live on 32nd Street between Rainier and Upshur, down the street from Deanna. Really great to see so many friends and neighbors here tonight. We've experienced so many of the problems that others have talked about and will continue to talk about, and that Lieutenant Sims cited, fronting onto 32nd Street and backing onto Rainier, which is a fairly heavily traveled byway through the city, we do recognize that some of the people we see evading stop signs or going a little bit faster than we might be comfortable with are friends and neighbors. And I think over the years, I think my husband too, have come to the conclusion that, well, there's something of a vindication to see police stopping people at the stop sign and slowing them down. That may not be the permanent answer. And I wanted to piggyback on what Charnette had said about the bulb outs or the bump outs. I'd really love to see our city invest in those throughout the neighborhood, sort of crisscross of streets, and maybe focus enforcement efforts more on Rhode Island Avenue, Chilham Road, those areas where we absolutely can't have traffic calming devices because of heavier traffic and the need for emergency vehicles to make it through. But even on Rainier Avenue, we do have the speed humps, and they don't actually calm traffic so much for those of us who know where they are, because those folks just speed up to the speed hump, slow down for an instant, and then speed through the traffic sign after. And I guess, what we're looking for is solutions that will work in the long term. And we think that those are really dependent on things that help people to follow the law. And that's not necessarily enforcement. Although, again, we're so grateful for the enforcement that does happen. Obviously, our police force has other things to be doing. They can't be everywhere at once. So we'd really just like to put a plug in for those traffic calming devices like the bulb outs, like they have in Tacoma Park, right? These beautiful little sort of pieces of street that bump into the roadway, force people to slow down as they go past, can be planted with native plants, can help with runoff, can really be an asset and an attribute in the neighborhood, but can really help to calm traffic, maybe as an alternative or as an add-on to enforcement, so that our police force isn't asked to deal with traffic problems all the time, can turn their attention to other issues, but so that we can continue the long and wonderful tradition of this neighborhood in finding solutions that bring us together rather than tearing us apart. So again, great to see everyone here tonight, and I hope that that's useful.
Thank you so much. Yeah, that's I think the reason why we talked about a holistic approach. I know the tool study did quite a few speed racing bumps, as we see them a little bit higher than usual, as well as rain gardens and even the little bumps and CUR. So we are in the process of, I think, year 3 for the tool design. We're waiting for the bridge area to be completed so that we could complete 34, because that was the number 1 priority. So we have entered year 4. But yeah, 100%. Thank you so much for the feedback. Gabriela, followed by Alex. I'm trying to write down who's next after each speaker. If by any chances I skip somebody, I apologize. Let me know that I skipped you by any chances by accident, okay? So Gabriela, you have the floor, followed by Alex and then Tim.
Okay, can you hear me now or not?
We could hear you.
Okay, great. Hi, so I live on the 3800 block of 32nd Street. So fortunately, by some miracle, I don't think experience the problems that are, affecting Mount Rainier, or, all of Mount Rainier. And it's mostly because it's not exactly a dead end, but, if you go down the hill, you hit Perry. So I've been in Mount Rainier since I moved here in February of 2004. And about a year later, I started my lobbying to get a signal at Eastern and Bunker Hill. And believe me, I emailed, called, and sent many letters to both Maryland and DC authorities. I'm personally a transportation professional. I'm a transportation engineer. So I kind of knew how things worked, right? And literally it is like whoever screams the loudest is the person that gets hurt. I had Jolene Ivey come to my house together with other state reps. And I have to say, unfortunately, nothing came of that. And, since then, I've been extremely disappointed with other, requests that, we made for that. And at the end of the day, the signal at Eastern and Bunker Hill was installed only because of the collision of a WMATA bus with a school bus. That was the only reason, even though everyone had been alerting the authorities or the powers that be that we needed to have a signal, not only for the speeding in the vehicles, but because no residents could get across to catch the bus. I mean, it was insane. I literally feel that anyone had to take their lives in their hands to cross Eastern Avenue. So that's one thing. The other thing is, just before the pandemic, Selena, you were not the mayor, but there were speed humps, or I don't know what people call them, installed on Bunker Hill. I immediately sent an email because, again, I am not bragging, but as a transportation professional, you never install speed humps at stop signs. And so what this situation has created is basically that no vehicle stops at the stop signs. Basically, they just roll over them, which is not the thing that anybody should be doing. A stop sign is a control device for vehicles to stop. You can, almost come to a stop, and a lot of people do that, and then they just continue on. The devices on Bunker Hill don't do absolutely anything. And in fact, they're just encouraging to people go over them. And because of the grade of Bunker Hill, people just roll at even higher speeds. So for me, literally, and I have the emails that I can forward you, Selena. I send emails to, my council members and to Mayor Miles about this. And I said, this is, and I hate to sound so negative, but I said, this is like, I can't believe that these were designed and installed, because it's just not the way that it's done in transportation. So, first of all, I know that there's and just to, as in closing, I will say that the speeding is a nationwide issue. It's a result of the pandemic, when you don't have as many vehicles on the street anymore. And so you have wide open streets for people to speed. It's really it's crazy. And like our, director of DOT, Pete Buttigieg, said it about 2 months ago. There's now data and, reports. So one of the previous speakers was asking for curb extensions, and yeah, that would be wonderful. Those are expensive and take time to design. I would encourage the mayor and everyone to do other measures like, huge planters that can be cheap and can be installed. And it's a fast solution. But if you're going to go out there and install speed humps, you need to go to Tacoma Park and look at the speed humps and speed bumps that they've designed, because the ones that we have here are really not working. And thank you, and sorry that I'm sounding so frustrated.
No, it's fine. You know what? Send me the email, so whatever information you have, I'm happy to review it. And, we are going to be putting other bumps and different things and everything that you have. Move it forward. This is a listening session, and we want to learn from the mistakes that happened in the past, the success and the mistakes, so that we could figure out what we could do. So I welcome your emails, and I'm sure the rest of the council will too. So send them our way, and we can work.
Please don't install things like you did on Bunker Hill. They don't work. So I beg you not to do that.
All right, perfect. And I'm going to ask you guys, usually I put 10 seconds on the chat. I might have to start doing 30 seconds so you wrap up your thoughts. I'm basically letting you finish your thoughts, but if we all take 4 to 5 minutes to speak, we are not going to have a chance to hear everybody. Or we could stay here until 11 o'clock. Our team is very flexible. They'll stay here listening, but I don't know if all of you guys will be standing with us. So next on deck, we had Alex. Alex, the floor is yours, 3 minutes, and I'll give you a 30-second notice to wrap up your thoughts, okay?
Great.
Go ahead, Alex.
Thank you, Mayor Benitez. So I'm Alex Cozen. I live on the 4000 block of 36th Street. I'd like to thank the mayor and council and our police department here for just taking the time to listen and just to set up this event and get the community's input. And I think you guys have done a great job at enforcing traffic violations so far, especially with the, frankly impressive statistics for the past 5 years. I understand how understaffed you folks are, but I also recognize you can't be everywhere all the time. And we have a pretty big city and we just don't have enough officers to police all of this. And so frankly, I think we do need to think about more engineering controls and things we can do that don't require an officer's presence to mitigate some of these traffic violations, particularly speed and running stop signs. So on my block, on the 4,000 block of 36, there are 5 kids under the age of 3, and one of our neighbors is in a wheelchair. Frankly, the sidewalks are in pretty terrible shape. I know there's been some sidewalk improvement in the rest of town. It hasn't made its way over to our side of town yet. So we have 3 and 4 inch cracks in the sidewalk panels. You can't really push a stroller down the sidewalk or ride a bike down the sidewalk. And so kids play in the street. But cars drive down the street awfully fast, and it can be pretty terrifying. It's not a very big street. And so, frankly, it would help to get the sidewalks fixed in the first place, just to keep some of the kids and people with disabilities in the sidewalk and off the street away from the cars. Now, I take my daughter to daycare down Bunker Hill every morning. And so I see all the cars that drive through the stop signs, that speed on Bunker Hill and just drive right through the stop signs on Bunker Hill. And so I'm the guy that was mad enough and or crazy enough last week to go and sit in front of the stop signs in Bunker Hill for an hour and videotape and watch all the cars that drove through. So what I can tell you is that we had basically 220 cars drove through in the hour I sat there from 4 to 5 p.m. on Friday afternoon. Only 30% of those cars actually came to a stop at the stop sign. 70% of the cars drove through, either rolled through or just drove through and didn't even bother slowing down. 15% of the cars drove through and didn't even slow down. And frankly, that's an astronomical number. It's a lot if you extrapolate all the way to the yearly metrics here. And so I just want to say that the really big problem, it's a big problem on Bunker Hill, it's a big problem on the smaller streets, and that's some explicit data showing how big of a problem it actually is. But I will say, Gabriella, you mentioned that the speed humps don't necessarily work on Bunker Hill. So I live over on the other side of 34th Street on Bunker Hill, and we see cars going way faster on that side than we do on the side with speed humps. So from my perspective, at least the speed humps slow people down. People go a lot faster when there are no speed humps there at all. And yes, people don't actually stop at the stop signs, but the stop signs also slow people down more than if there were no stop sign there at all. So it's better than nothing, frankly, but it's still not working. And so one of the concerns is that at the intersection of Bunker Hill and 36th Street, there is no stop sign, where there's one at 37th Street and 35th Street. So it can be pretty hard to get out and turn from 36th onto Bunker Hill because you can't really see traffic coming. It goes pretty fast and there's no stop sign for the cross traffic. So that's something that some of the people—
Hold on, Alex.
Jimmy, can you mute your phone?
Do me a favor. Can you guys please mute your mics if you're not speaking? Because while Alex was speaking, I was picking up a lot of noise in the background at the end. So if you're not the speaker, please mute your phone, please. Go ahead, Alex.
Oh, thank you, Mayor Benitez. So I'd just like to finish up and say that again, I think our officers have done a really good job at enforcing the traffic, traffic measures, but they can't be everywhere at once. And we just frankly don't have enough people. And it's not practical to ask them to do that all the time. I think they have better things to do, more interesting things to do. So I think we should be investing in engineering controls that are passive. We have a lot of ARPA money now, and we should use this to invest in our community in sort of permanent fixtures. Like Kate said, I think the bump outs in Tacoma Park are pretty nice. We could put native plants there. We could put art installations from artists or sculptors in town in the bump outs to, add some vibrancy to the streets, to the community. I really like the idea that I believe Gabriella mentioned of huge planters and just putting them in a single lane of traffic to slow people down and make people have to drive around it. I think it's a cheap and easy thing to do, and big planters are kind of nice. And yeah, so again, that's sort of my piece, and I don't necessarily know what the answer is, but I'm glad to be a part of the conversation, and thank you, everybody.
So Alex, Auke I'll send an email back to you to figure out when Bunker Hill and 36 is supposed to get fixes. Right now during the winter, obviously we don't do a lot of the block repairs. I think we did some for this year. With the ARPA money, we are looking to do some infrastructure. We also are very happy. I mean, it's one of those like, are we super happy about it? But the speed camera money that from Rhode Island has done pretty well. And what we've done in previous years, we have utilized the money to be able to invest into our sidewalks. And that's why you have seen some extra work done beyond even what we could allocate in our budget. So basically the speed camera money has been going to like, what's it called? Sidewalk repairs.
Thank you.
So
What's been done so far has been very nice. It just hasn't made it over to us yet.
So I would say I'll reach out to Mr. Kamali and Director La Torres to figure out when your street is up. We are going to be making changes to the website to include some of that information, including maps of where we've been and where the new streets are coming forward to get done. So that way you know when it's your turn. But it's coming. So the good thing about having a holistic approach with the tool design was that we started with the street that needed the most and made our way across. So, but we're hitting all the rest of the streets. So I'll get back to you and let you know when your street is scheduled to get some work. Okay. And the team is taking notes of everything everyone's saying so that we could have answers and listen and take this into consideration. Okay. So next up on deck on the speaker list, I believe is Tim. Hello, Tim. Rainier Elementary PTO president, and as the resident, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mayor Benitez, and just wanted to say thank you to everyone else for joining and for helping to organize the meeting tonight. I'm talking in two dual roles, as Selena said. I'm the president of the Mount Rainier Elementary PTO, so I have a special focus on making our streets safer to improve walkability in terms of students being able to get to and from school, but also obviously I'm concerned about this issue as a resident too. First, there's many issues that are at play here. I see at least three different buckets. There's a public safety aspect, there's an environmental aspect involved with trying to reduce the traffic on our streets, and then there's just a general traffic and transportation aspect. And fortunately, we have residents. Gabrielle mentioned that she has a background in transportation. I know Jarrett on council has a background on transportation. So hopefully we can really turn to some of the people in the neighborhood who have expertise in traffic and transportation to help come up with innovative solutions for this. I know from following some of the back and forth that happened on the community listserv, there's concerns about impacting convenience or that some solutions might be considered to be too punitive. I just wanted to say that I'm open-minded on whichever solutions we choose to pursue. I'm joining the meeting tonight to hear the suggestions that everyone else has. But the main point that I'd like to stress is I think that we need to fundamentally change the way that we think about our streets. We need to make them less about cars and much more focused on pedestrians and cyclists. Within a small walkable city like ours, we need to start viewing cars more as a nuisance to be tolerated to the least extent possible. And cars, frankly, need to start becoming the second or third priority. And we need to think a lot more about walkability and just general livability in terms of the type of city that we want to live in. I know some people, Gabe Popkin in particular, was citing examples of walkable cities over in Europe. I think, frankly, exploring a European model of walkability is something that we should take into account. We shouldn't discount something just because it might be from Europe or from Canada, or we should look at the best ideas that we can find and try to figure out how we can tailor them to the city. As I mentioned earlier, as a PTO president, I'm especially concerned about the safety of students and also parents at Mount Rainier Elementary, but also Thomas Stone, and for all the kids who attend aftercare at Joe's Movement Emporium or other aftercare programs throughout the city. At Mount Rainier Elementary, we're already doing all that we can to promote walkability. We hold Walk to School Wednesdays with students. We're usually one of the only schools in the county, or frankly, even in the state, to participate in walk and bike to school days on a regular basis. We find that encouraging families to walk and giving them little groups that can walk together helps to build a sense of community among walkers. But in order to do this, you have to create an incentive for people to walk, and you can't have, I've heard feedback from parents that they don't want to let their kids walk to and from school because frankly, just in my own experience in the mornings, the number of kids that I see nearly getting hit in crosswalks happens much too frequently. Which actually leads to one of the other solutions I was going to suggest. We do need more crosswalks, and I'm happy to help identify some of the key intersections, especially to and from school, that are missing them, at least around Mount Rainier Elementary, and I'm sure that my colleagues on Thomas Stone's PTO would be happy to do the same for their part of the city. A couple other possible solutions to throw out there. We should explore adding mini rotaries in intersections that are large enough to possibly handle them. We could embrace the Mount Rainier tree culture to place tree boxes or planters in the middle of intersections, maybe have some sort of flexi pave to help protect the tree roots. I think we should consider the idea of one-way streets. Again, I know that that will generate some pushback because it creates an inconvenience for whoever lives on that street, but I personally would much rather have to drive an extra block or two to get to my house if it's part of a greater solution for that solves some of the traffic issues that we have. Could consider local traffic only during rush hours. For anyone who's ever driven into University Park, you'll know that people do not use that as a cut through because it's almost impossible to navigate your way around it. There's enough streets that are closed off between certain hours, or really just say, this is for local traffic only. And I would explore even possibly strategically closing off parts of different streets, again, to make it as inconvenient as possible for people to use Mount Rainier as a cut through. One area in particular, this might be controversial, but one area in particular that I've been advocating for a long time has been the area right in front of Joe's. As I mentioned, Joe's is a site that has aftercare with children. It has people who attend different events there, whether it's plays or classes in the evenings. And if you were to put just some sort of little closing off the small section in front of Joe's so that people could still turn into the parking lot, behind ZZ's, but I guarantee you people will not be using Bunker Hill Road as a cut through if they literally cannot get through in that one small section. The last point I wanted to make here, because I know I'm almost out of time, it was mentioned earlier that it took a school bus accident to finally get a stoplight at Bunker Hill and Eastern. I remember my wife was actually the one who took a picture of the crashed bus, sent it into the news, and then a few days later, we finally had a stoplight. We need to make sure we do not wait until we have some sort of local tragedy before we finally address this issue. It took a school bus accident to get that stoplight. It is only a matter of time before we have some kid get hit in the street on their way to or from school. And I really hope we can find a solution before that happens. So thank you again, and I look forward to hearing everyone else's ideas tonight.
I'm waiting to be called on if I need to do that. If I don't, I think I'm next after Tim. Okay, then. It's maybe good that I follow Tim because it's a great example of I really admire everything he's doing, and we agree on some things, but I disagree on a lot of things. For one thing, one-way streets are typically used by traffic engineers to allow faster traffic. It's not really what we want to be doing. It is also environmentally really bad because it adds anywhere from a quarter to a third of the actual miles driven. It's not just inconvenient. That one doesn't work. I really applaud those efforts for more walkable cities. As chair of the MUTC, we've talk about and work on keeping downtown walkable, and the neighborhoods should be too. But the fact is, whatever we wish, streets are for cars primarily, and that's not going to change in anything reasonable that we can do on our scale, in part because we're a little municipality, but also in part because we are at this transition point with a major metro, a major city. And if I know the mayor's mentioned, some other people have mentioned, trying to address these problems that we have without just kicking the can over someplace else. And if we block streets, either temporarily or fully, we are absolutely doing that. The traffic will not go away. It will just go elsewhere. And because of the way Mount Rainier is laid out, it's not going to go elsewhere, like elsewhere. It's going to make the major arteries even more untenable than they are at rush hours. So with that said, I think that we absolutely should be engineering in some things. I love the idea of small traffic circles where we can get them to work. With our layout, we might be having to do eminent domain or something, but those would be great. But neck downs and bulb outs and raised crosswalks have been all proven to increase people stopping. And this isn't, my opinion. These are things that have been studied. And as opposed to just traffic bumps are a blunt tool. They do one thing. They do make people stop, but they do nothing else. And they also tear up the bottoms of cars. They get torn up by the plows, and bulb outs and neck downs and similar don't have those problems. Neither do circles. And they can also be used to increase accessibility for all people. And they can be used for stormwater management, as was previously mentioned, with rain gardens. And also, as has been mentioned by a couple people, they can be used for beautification rather than just uglification. I love the idea of using them to put art in and express how what this community is. So I think those are really our ways forward. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Nathan. My apology, I dropped my poor phone, has been on conference calls at 6 o'clock in the morning. So between being charged and running out of battery back and forward, it's been a long day. But I thank everybody for their different comments. Tim, also Nathan as well. Next on the list of speakers, we have Priscilla, followed by Shivali. Priscilla, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Selena, or Mayor, Mrs. Mayor, Madam Mayor. Hi, everybody. I am Priscilla, and my daughter and I live on Upshur. I'm really pleased to see everybody on the call. I'm learning a lot, which is great. And one thing that I certainly have learned as a fairly new resident in Mount Rainier is that we have a lot of expertise in this community, and I think that's great. I don't really have a comment so much as a question for all of you who do have expertise, and those of you who are our law enforcement officers and our city folks. And that is, I would love to know if part of the planning, the kind of greater planning process that incorporates the traffic issue will include disseminating information on the types of interventions that we could put on different streets and their efficacy, their demonstrated efficacy in other places. And as a resident, maybe that's not information I'm necessarily entitled to, but I think it would be important because this has been a lively conversation for all of us, and people are engaged and feel that our safety is being compromised and even more so in the last couple of years. So really, again, I have a question. Is there going to be a possibility of seeing a comprehensive feasibility study that includes those pieces of information?
Thank you, Priscilla. I will say to you, usually when we've done studies, they usually, get a third party to be able to perform. The community is highly involved, and we like to hear the voices directly from the community. When we did the tool design, they walked every single block in the city, and they held various meetings in which the residents even approach the people who are doing the studies and let them know what the need is, and we'll compare it with the data. So once we're able to move forward to a study, definitely, we'll let you guys know who's doing the study and have feedback directly from the community and the reason why certain, usually they present on why is it that those specific things are recommended for those reasons. So that would be the short version. So basically anything that could be given or be given, we're very transparent in that end. PD usually every Monday, I would like to say they're putting out the various data when it comes to, locations more or less, or things that are happening in the city to keep the residents informed as well. So I would say when it comes to what measures are going to be utilized and where, that's going to be a whole open meeting for a legislative session where we'll present the findings of the studies even before anything's done to proceed on them. So I guess the answer will be yes. And I think I answered your question.
Thank you. It was partly that and partly just to see what works everywhere else. Because we've heard a whole lot of issues and a whole lot of potential solutions. And maybe because I like to do research, for me, that would be helpful to know, the different things that are working in different places and different types of streets.
Yeah, no, you're correct also saying that we have very knowledgeable people in the city of Rainier. That's the reason we have so many committees, former volunteers. So if we have to put a committee that's going to work in this efforts and we get enough volunteers, we'll work with them as well. That might be a method to have the various voices sitting in and supporting this efforts as well. Okay. All right. It's nice seeing you as well. And thank you for all the messages you've been sending in and also for raising some of the concerns. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay. Shivali, you have the floor next. And any other members of residents who have recently joined, if you'd like to speak, just go ahead and put your name on the chat to make sure I call upon your name to be the next speaker, because Shivali will be the last one I have in the list for speakers right now. Go ahead, Shivali, the floor is yours.
Hi, can everyone hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you for holding this meeting. I'm really happy to hear everybody's voices and see people's faces. It's been a long and cold winter. So happy to see folks. I'm glad that, we talked a little bit about the tool design study when I was on council. We commissioned the tool design study. This is the one that found, for example, that 96% of our curbs were not ADA compliant. Gabriella, you'll be interested to know that tool design also found those speed bumps and at the stop signs on Bunker Hill to be very curious. They specifically pointed those out. One guy said he has never seen that before. They're very old. They predate me by a lot. And I was told that they were installed because residents asked for it. When I joined, speed bumps were a big concern then also when I joined council. And at the time, what the chief back then had said was that a lot of these speed bumps were put up, whenever, you could, a block can petition for it. So when a block petitions and they've got the appropriate amount of signatures, they're put up. But these are temporary measures until the city could do a holistic traffic study. So when we did the tool design study, they came out, tool design was not specifically a traffic study. It was more for streets and fixing our streets and sidewalks. And to to Alex Cozen and whoever else is wondering when their block's turn is, that's information that can be found out very easily by calling the city. By the time they came out with a 5-year plan, which the council had tweaked a bit, and that's the plan that Public Works has been working on. Mr. Kamali, as Public Works Director, did a great job of organizing the team and the department resources, and the streets and sidewalks have, are in the process of being fixed. So the tool design based was, so I have one question and then a comment. They spent a lot of time, as Mayor Benitez said, observing traffic patterns in the areas that the city staff and residents identified as problematic. They made, in addition to their streets and sidewalks recommendations on fixing, they also made a lot of traffic calming recommendations with specific recommendations for specific blocks, which should get bump outs, raised pavements. One thing that was discussed extensively was creating bump outs to encourage slowing down without putting speed bumps up on every block. I mean, a lot of the things that you guys are saying are things that were said back then. I'm wondering, just what's the status of that plan? I haven't seen any bump outs being installed, but I know that they made recommendations for a bunch of them. They had other traffic calming suggestions as well. I'm wondering if any of those have been implemented and what that plan is. So that's my one general question. I remember there were going to be bump outs and, other non-speed bump solutions. And so far I haven't seen any since I've left council. And then what was the other thing? Just in general, as a resident, if it feels like, I know that wasn't a full holistic traffic study, but at the very least, there are some places that I think could use bump outs and raised pavement without too much discussion and sooner rather than later. But in any case, it sounds to me like, as much as it was needed back then, it's even more so now, but a traffic study is long overdue. And please, no more speed bumps, please no one-way streets. Traffic calming devices like bump outs, raised pavements, and other interventions are much preferred, both because they're not speed bumps and one-way streets, and like Nathan said, that these are also opportunities to beautify our community. I remember while on council, some were concerned that they cost more than, putting up a speed bump is really cheap and easy. But these other options, they cost more, they involve Public Works, spending the time, resources, but I think they're worth it. Whether it's in this meeting or in the near future, I'd like to know what the status is of the recommendations that Tool Design made previously for the various blocks that would get bump outs and other interventions. And then also I'd like to, second everybody else who has said that we need a holistic traffic study. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And our city manager is also on the line. I know I've been working when it comes to tool design. There have been some rain guards that have been added. And basically at this point, remember, it was a 5-year study, like every year adding. We moved ourselves up in the list to year 2 because the year 1 was 34th Street and we fell by the school, right? Thomaston to be specifically. But we felt like with other construction, the levy back and forward and them ripping out the street a couple of times over, it was a waste of it was a waste of resources to fix that street, to have it tear down consistently and having all the heavy machinery. So we said we could wait a little bit to make sure that happened. And once the levy part was done, we'll revisit 34th Street. In the meantime, we have done, other stuff, but following also the tool design. Let me see. Mr. Kamali, any feedback on some of the things that we have done in the meantime when it comes to with the tool design?
Hello, Mayor. No, I appreciate the community and I want to say thank you to everybody. I've been listening to everybody and I'm learning a lot tonight. Regarding the tool design, as you mentioned it, we're still in the first 5 years recommendation. Then we have other areas which is listed based on the community input that we had 3 years ago. And unfortunately, when I was the public work director, the budget was so limited. So every year we could spend as much as we were given by mayor and council. So Rocio, the director of public works, can provide that information to the community. And it was basically mainly tool design was done to upgrade the street and the sidewalks. There are some recommendation, as Shivali said, for the curb extension and raised crosswalks, which are so expensive. And we have shared this information 2 years ago with mayor and council at that time. But unfortunately, we were not given the opportunity to spend as much money as we needed. They are very expensive elements. And I would like to comment regarding the speed bumps on the Bunker Hill Road, because if everybody recalls that, they used to have a rubber bumps over there. And the former mayor and council, they wanted to replace it with asphalt. And that was the reason that most of them are at the stop sign, like on Bunker Hill Road, on Perry Streets. And I was talking to the former city manager and I said, it's not gonna work. They said, no, the former mayor and council, they wanted to have it at the same location where the rubbers were, where the rubber bumps were there. So unfortunately, I know that was wrong, but somehow the decision was made at that time. And for more information on the tool design, I can have Rocio to provide that information regarding 36th Street and other locations in the city. But to me, after listening to the community, and I appreciate everybody's recommendation, I think the next step, we have to get all of this information together. And as our chief is recommending, we should go for the professional to weigh in and provide some recommendation in regards to a complete or comprehensive study for the traffic calming devices and also some speed reductions. So I do appreciate everybody's comments, and definitely we're gonna move forward with the direction of mayor and council, and hopefully we'll be at the better position next year at this time, hopefully.
Thank you, Mr. Kamali. I think the other thing to keep in mind the last 2 years because of COVID, what Mayor and Council did was basically tied our budget to the minimum amount we could utilize to make sure that we keep the essential functions for the city and be prepared for what we didn't know at the time, how hard COVID was going to hit us. And what we wanted to make sure was at least, right, that the basic functions for the city will continue. We prepare ourselves sufficiently where we reduce the budget to the bare minimum that we could do it. So that way, in case we were hit severely, we could still keep the city afloat. And learn from some of the past experience. At one period of time, the city was basically paying their staff in debt, out of credit cards, because of so many losses, right? And not enough money coming into the city. So we decided to do that, and in doing that, we were able. I believe it was the last year, Mr. Kamali, where I petitioned for us to utilize, I believe, 100,000 for the speed camera to put some more money into the budget for the sidewalks to make sure we continue the work and we continue moving forward. So we do have some ARPA money. We do have some decisions to make, but I think the study is the most reasonable thing for us to do in order to make sure we gather all the information in order to keep all the studies together. So I'm gonna ask one more thing. I need to know, because we're running out of time, if there's anybody else from the community that like to speak, please let us know. And thank you, Nathan, for setting the information. Kate Minkins, do you want to say something, or do you need me to just read the paragraph that you wrote? I don't hear you, Kate. So it says, she needed to drop as an avid dog walker out of the streets every single day. I'll be joining as many of these conversations as possible. It is monthly occurrence where we are almost hit by vehicles. not stopping the stop signs. Hopefully it doesn't take a serious action in order for safety measures to be taken. All right, perfect. So I'm gonna open up the floor to our council to wrap up, as well as our chief. Jamie, followed by Jared, go ahead.
Hey, Mary Abe up. I don't know if you want to get her first.
Okay, Mary Abe, go ahead. The floor is yours.
Thank you. I'm Mary Abe over on 31st Street. Been kind of following the speed bump thing. We have terrible speeding on 31st Street. And even if the speed bumps, that there seems to be people that are temporary measures, they don't like them. I really feel that until the money is there, we need to have something done on our street. With the food forest there, there's a lot of traffic, there's a lot of kids, and they really, really pick up speed right as they're going through there. So I guess what I would like to say are two things. If you're going to prioritize where you put any kind of speed, tables, anything that's going to do to restrict the speed, I would suggest that you prioritize around areas like that rather than necessarily complaints, because those areas are places of gathering where the public goes. And I would say the same is over on the 30th Street, where there's another playground. The other thing that I would mention, with speed bump, with the bump outs comes the potential to actually incorporate green infrastructure. I would strongly recommend that you overlay the bump outs with the recent study, I believe, that LIDC did for you all, looking for green infrastructure and stormwater management. So I would ask you that you would probably intertwine the two. Thanks.
All right, thank you. Jimmy, you have something to say?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. And thanks everybody for joining. And I do have to apologize for trying to do some dishes. Jody cooked, and we have meetings every day this week, so I'm supposed to do the dishes. But I was listening, and I learned something. The issue that, we're volunteers, and there are probably more people who are expert in the city. Also, some of the problem we have to weigh is the question of, our tax base and how much money we can spend. Those kind of cheap speed bumps that were done many years ago were because I think they cost $250 a speed bump, and residents wanted those, and now those aren't that useful anymore. But people should send us kind of emails and links. I said to council@mountaineermd.org. It's interesting about the issue about one way, because we're actually considering doing that in more streets, because we're talking about doing bike lanes and having two-way traffic and bike lanes is not useful. So we're weighing, trying to do kind of way for doing biking, doing traffic calming, trying to keep within our budget so we can actually lower the taxes. Those are all things we weigh. And I think during the budget session, which is coming up and starting next month, we're going to be trying to figure out how much money can we spend on traffic calming, and what is a kind of a holistic global way to do this. So I learned a lot. I just want to appreciate everybody going in. They should continue to send us emails, and we're going to try and work on this during the session. Thank you.
Thank you, Jimmy. Jared?
Yeah, and I just want to thank everyone for coming out. I actually, just wanted to make the comment. It's actually an intensely personal issue for me. My grandparents were actually killed in 1988 when someone drove through a stop sign, on a foggy day. So street safety is really important. I'm really, really thrilled how passionate everyone was on this call, all the feedback. And I mean, not only that, like really great ideas. So I really appreciate how everyone on the call came with comments and thoughts and well thought out, and their own experiences, but actually respect for the experience of everyone else and consideration for the community. So I just want to say that again. There are some flexibilities in ARP. There are quite quite a number of limitations to ARP funding in terms of being able to use it on street safety. There are some limited flexibilities, but I did want to also, and then we need to balance that with the need for other social spending. Especially, we may hopefully we're out of this wave. Hopefully we're out of the pandemic, but we could be in still could get another wave. I did want to mention, as folks know, in November, a very large infrastructure bill passed. There's a number of new programs, including funding opportunities for infrastructure, for pavement, for healthy pavement, for green infrastructure, for a lot of the things. As Tim mentioned and others have said, my day job's in transportation. I spend a lot of time tracking these opportunities for various things I do. So please do know we're tracking all opportunities that are coming from the feds, coming from the state of Maryland, from the county, and we'll pursue them. That's creates an opportunity that we may not have, given, as Jimmy's mentioned, we have a very, very limited tax base, very small commercial tax base, not a lot of wiggle room. So the more consensus we can get, on the plan that we want forward and I know there's some very really passionate voices in this community. The more consensus we can get about to pursue, the better we're going to be able to pursue solutions and resources to deliver. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Jared. And I apologize, Shivali. I didn't notice that you say you needed the floor one more time. I'll give it to you, and I'll give it followed by Chief, and we'll be wrapping up this meeting. Go ahead, Shivali. The floor is yours.
Thank you. I just wanted to add to what Mary Abe said. I like Mary, I live near the food forest, which until last year was not an activated public space. And now that it's been wonderful to have so many people from the community come to this area. And I have to echo that getting something here that's not a speed bump would be really helpful for all the children and adults and pets that are coming in and out of this space, more so than before. This is on 31st between Taylor and Upshur. And also, I again just want to emphasize that viewing all of these sidewalks that we have as public spaces, where this is where we all recreate also. Like we don't have as many parks and like other large public spaces as cities that are further away from downtown DC do. A lot happens on these sidewalks, and if we have things like bump outs or those the bulb outs, and like those will just be all the more space for people to interact with each other. And I really appreciate Public Works, Mr. Kamali and Ms. Rocio Latour, all the work that they've been doing on fixing the streets and sidewalks. I'm looking forward to the next phase of getting some of those recommendations that Tool Design made years ago into these alternate traffic calming devices. I understood that, funding was a concern back then. I know that some council members back then had some sticker shock at the cost of some of these, but I'm wondering now if there's, more people that are interested in it and make their voices known to the council. It, as Jared said, it's easier to move this issue forward. So please make sure that you let your council know, not just at these meetings, but in the future as well.
Thank you, guys. We have 2 minutes before the meeting shuts off completely. Chief, anything to add before we wrap the last comment out?
Yes, ma'am. Quickly, Mayor. Thank you, everyone, for coming out. We've heard your concerns, and we really appreciate your passion. And please know that this will probably be the first of many meetings. We will keep you abreast as we move forward. We will keep you updated. We will keep you included. 31st and 30th Streets, we will continue our enforcement on those streets. I'll work with Mr. Kamali and Public Works to see if we can get another no entry sign to Otis Street as well. So thank you for your input, and please feel free to email us at any time. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. And Mona, thank you so much for your email. So council@mountRainierMD.org. That's where you could get all four of us, council members, as well as the mayor. And we definitely usually when it comes to various things, we usually tag our team, which is our chief of police, public work, or whether it's code or whether it's our city manager. We all share the information with each other to make sure we best provide the help. I'll say thank you. Have a good night, and we look forward to having you guys join the teams to get more feedback and as well as more conversation. So good night and thank you.